Good afternoon. I'm Scott Grams. I'm the Executive Director of the Illinois Landscape Contractors Association, and we have a great group for today's webinar on truck enforcement. As you are all aware, you're on mute and you're going to remain on mute for the duration of the webinar. No landscape company thinks of themselves as a trucking company, yet we know that we use trucks every single day, whether those trucks are carrying people or tools or plants or dirt or stone. We also know that the laws that regulate trucking can be complicated and extensive. We know that penalties can range from lost time, lost productivity, to even hundreds to thousands of dollars. So the purpose of today's webinar is to inform and educate landscape companies that when their trucks are on the road, they are trucking companies. And a better understanding of the law helps lead to fewer headaches and violations, and also improves your company's relationship with law enforcement in the very communities that you're doing business. Today's speaker is Mark Fisher. Mark is the executive director of a group called the Illinois Truck Enforcement Association. He's going to discuss the laws that apply to landscape companies, including common overweight issues, proper plating of vehicles, interactions with law enforcement, and what commercial drivers need to know during a traffic stop. And attendees are going to gain a thorough understanding of new requirements and also what actions can be done to potentially avoid some of those lost productivity, time, and fines. Additionally, with equipment theft on the rise, Mark's going to address how companies can protect themselves out on the road and what to do in case of theft. And finally, he's going to provide a nice overview of ITEA and provide apps and resources that are going to be available to you. Now, if you have questions during the webinar, we ask that you use the question box located on your toolbar. You will type a question in there, and that will send it to the ILCA staff. We're going to hold all the questions until the end of the webinar. However, you can ask your question at any time, so feel free to use the toolbox so that you do not forget. This webinar is going to be recorded, and a recording is going to be placed on both the ILCA members only website as well as our closed Facebook page. And we should have the webinar posted within about 48 hours after the webinar has concluded. So with that, I now want to introduce today's speaker, Mark Fisher. Mark?
Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining me and allowing me to present to you guys. I think this is an awesome opportunity. I think that you guys probably have a ton of questions. Maybe we'll get to some, maybe in my presentation, maybe not. But first, I'd like to introduce, let me get this going here. So we'll get started here. Again, I'm Mark Fisher, the Executive Director of the Illinois Truck Enforcement Association. Our organization is a nonprofit organization that was created in 2009 by 10 police officers. Their goal was to bring fair and ethical truck enforcement to law enforcement as well as to the trucking industry. Back before then, police officers were taught, hey, if you want to go out there and you want to make a lot of money for the police department, here's a bunch of tickets you guys can write. They're big tickets. They'll make you look awesome to your bosses. You write away. The trucking company will pay them because they're not going to take the time out of their jobs and their work to go report and try to fight them. So enjoy yourself. These officers got together and they created this organization to say that's not how it works. We got to bring fairness into this. The goal here is traffic safety. It's not about revenue. And that's what we've done since then. What we do is we have brought training to law enforcement across Illinois. We have a 40-hour state certified class that teaches these guys how to do it, trains them how to fairly do it, and we invite the trucking industry into those classes. Any trucking industry member can attend our 40-hour class or any of our classes that we host, so you guys can learn all of the laws that we're out there enforcing, so you can bring them back and teach your guys how to be safe, how to stay within the confines of the law, so we can all work together. So we're bringing uniformity, education and resources to promote traffic safety. Currently, we have an app we're going to show you in a second here. We just released in February. Within this app, it allows you guys all the same information as the police officers that are roadside writing you guys overweight tickets. It gives you the ability to look at the trucks that you have and figure out how much weight can these trucks legally carry. What kind of driver's license does this truck need to operate it safely on the road and legally on the road? We work with state agencies and other organizations such as the Illinois Landscape Contractors, Midwest Truckers, and various other organizations to bring these laws to the industry members, to law enforcement, and to make sure everybody's on the same page. When there's a problem, if you guys get a ticket as a member of our organization, we happily review it for you. We provide you information on how to stay safe. We'll even help work you through what it takes to go to court and work these fines out, or pay these fines, or if you feel that you're not guilty at all, we can provide resources that show this is what the law says. All of our standards of practice, which are also included in the app, are vetted by all of the state agencies that wrote them. So IDOT, Secretary of State's office, everybody's looked at what we're teaching to verify that they're on board with what it is and that it is exactly as the law was intended. We also sit on certain committees, such as the Divisible Load Committee with the Illinois Department of Transportation Permit Office, to work with the state police as well as IDOT, so everybody knows when they're buying an oversized overweight permit what the rules are and what determines if a load is divisible, what determines if a permit is good or not. So everybody's on the same page. If you start from Hebron, Illinois, north end of Illinois, all the way down to Cairo, Illinois, you should be able to get the same treatment driving your truck through those towns. So as I said, we created an app, and our app allows you guys as members, if you guys join up as members, to get in and get all of our resources and all of our information. We even have a little COVID spot in there with COVID resources. A lot of those extensions and exemptions are dying out. Currently, the registrations, that extension is gone. So hopefully you guys have all been busy renewing your plates here on Friday, so you're not getting tickets today. So our app, here we go, is broken down into documents and tools. We have all of our resources, such as our standards of practice. You can look it up, you can share them, print them, email them. This is a simple one on basically saying that you have to use a scale when writing a ticket. You can't just guess the weight. It's, believe it or not, something that has happened. We have our resource documents, our Hamilton weight chart, which will show you what exemptions and exceptions are for certain trucks, depending on what truck you have and how many axles are on that truck, and our calculators. So if you buy a new truck, you can look through and go through the calculator to determine if this truck needs a CDL, what kind of CDL, if it doesn't need a CDL at all. So you know who can and can't be driving your trucks that you have on the road, so you can promote safety, including all the way through if it has a trailer. Has definitions in there so you can understand, well, what am I looking at when we're talking about gross vehicle weight rating. So the various ways that a CDL is found, everything is right here in here. So then it'll tell you, yeah, I went through the whole flow chart and I need a CDL, and this is when it's required. And this is just a printout of the flow chart that we have created if you just wanted to print it and keep it hanging up in your office. So in a nutshell, that is our app that we've just released. It's available on Google and iOS for Apple phones. You can search it under Google as ITEA Illinois, and on Apple it's ITEA Mobile. So now getting into the nitty gritty. I tried to think of the stuff that's really going to affect you guys. There's so much involved here, and there's probably some things that I've missed because you guys will say, hey, I have a truck that looks like this, or I do this sort of work, and that might fall under a whole different category. So as we go through this, again, I'm happy to answer any questions, and even later on, you guys can reach out to me, and I'm happy to help you guys weed through all these Illinois truck laws. So the gross weight is what the actual weight of the vehicle on the road is. It's found by weighing the vehicle and its use can be used to determine a license classification. So when you look for the gross vehicle weight, or the gross weight, I'm sorry, is when an officer puts your truck on a scale, whether it's a platform scale in the ground or right there on the side of the road with portable scales, that is the actual weight that that truck weighs. And you then look at the federal bridge formula, which is a chart that we have in that app, and also a document. We have a flow chart in there to figure it out. That's how you would determine what the actual weight is. You always measure from the hub of the axles in the center, the steer to the last axle, That'll give you your total overall allowed weight. Breaking it down from there, once you have your full truck, say you have a 3-axle dump truck, you measure from the steer axle to the very last axle, center hubs, you look at the chart, and you can determine how much that whole truck can hold. But now, once you get to the steer axle itself, you're only allowed 20,000 pounds. So as you go through it, a steer axle is 20,000 pounds. In the back, you have 2 axles. Each of those axles, even though they're next to each other, by themselves is only allowed 20,000 pounds. So an officer pulls you over and weighs those 2 axles together. As a group, they're allowed 1 axle. We're going to get that in a second, but singly, it's only 20,000 pounds. And this is where we're getting into, you have your steer axles, a single axle, 20,000, your tandem axle is 2 axles between 40 inches and 96 inches, and they're allowed 34,000 pounds, with no single axle being allowed more than 20,000. This is all an engineered mathematical thing. A lot of numbers, a lot of letters, way above my head. But if you look up the IBC in chapter 15.111, they have the whole formula that figures out the federal bridge formula. And basically 40 to 96 inches are allowed 34,000 pounds. And I put this part in here because I think you guys as landscapers might have some of these trailers. And if you have smaller trailers that are landscape trailers, and you measure out those 2 axles, and you say, oh, I got 2 axles, that's 34,000 pounds. If they don't hit that 40-inch mark, then they're only going to be allowed 20,000 pounds for the both of them. In order to get 34,000 pounds, they have to hit that 40-inch mark. And like I said, some of you guys, as landscapers, you guys might have those lawnmower tractors, they're smaller tractors with the tires pretty close together. And you go out there and measure them and be like, man, these are only small tires, these are only 36 inches. That trailer is only going to be allowed 20,000 on that set of axles. So, as I said, here's a perfect example of a full-size truck. You see these all the time. You guys might have these in your fleet. And this is what I'm talking about with a shorter axle at less than 40 inches. If you measure out those hubs and they come in, the hub center of the 2 axles, and they come in at under 40 inches, that guy's only allowed 20,000 pounds. Whereas the truck behind us, those 2 axles are allowed 34,000 pounds because they're between 40 and 96 inches. So as we continue to get into the full gross weight, we know we've got this truck, we know the steer axle is allowed 20 by itself, the 2 axles in the back are allowed 34. When we get to a combination truck, kind of like the picture we just showed, with a semi-truck and a semi-trailer, now he's got 5 axles. How do we determine what his legal weights are on the road? The officers can do what's called bridging an axles, set of axles, and that's where they measure within. So that truck, we would measure the last 4 axles, leave off the steer axle, and again, you would go back to the same chart you would use before to determine what the allowed weight is from axles 1 to 3. And you would look at that same chart, and now you look and you say, okay, well, 4 axles is only allowed this much weight. So I know there's, like I said, I know it's a lot coming out here. A lot of you guys probably have kind of a grasp on what I'm talking about. We're looking at 3 different things when we're talking about gross weight: the actual single axles by themselves, a set of tandem axles, and then the total gross weight and the bridging within their axles. Special hauling vehicles, which are the shorty dumps or the bombers, like I just showed the picture of, can get an exception by having a special hauling vehicle permit. They can pay $125 to the state for the year and allows these guys an exception to the bridging of the axles. And it's very, very important to have this, because without it, these trucks that you guys are loading with 72,000 pounds are really only allowed about 55,000 pounds between axles 2 and 5. So without that SHV, the officer is going to measure between axle 2, which is the first drive axle, to axle 5, which is the last axle on the trailer. And chances are you're going to be allowed 55, 58,000, and your actual weight on a scale is going to be about 62, 64,000 in that area. And you're going to get an overweight ticket for that without that SHV. In order to qualify for it, you have to have a total axle spacing from the stair axle to the last axle, the rear axle, has to be less than 42 feet. And the axles from the first drive axle, axle 2, to the last trailer axle has to be over 18 feet. If you have that SHV and you meet these, which is about 98% of all these trucks you see on the road, you see them leaving the gravel pit, bringing dirt, they're allowed 72,000 pounds gross weight, and the officer can't bridge them within. So you get 72,000 pounds for the whole truck, you get 20,000 pounds on a single axle, and you get 34,000 pounds on the 2 tandem axles for each axle, with a total of 72,000. So again, this guy, he's got his SHV. He measures out at usually around 38 feet from axle 2, which is that first drive axle, axle 5, which is that last trailer axle. He's over 18 foot 6 inches. He's 20 feet. He has his SHV that he's paid for through the state for $125. They no longer give out, they used to give out little stickers that you put in your window, and they were about, I don't know, the size of a quarter. And people would expect the police to be able to see those as you guys are going by at 40 miles an hour. They don't do that anymore. They just have a receipt, which make sure your driver has that receipt in the truck, or at least a copy that's legible enough that the officer can see the printout of the receipt that it was paid for and when it was paid. So they can look and say, okay, they have it. When an officer sees this truck and they run the license plate, it will tell them if they have a special hauling vehicle permit and it's paid for. Even on a portion plates, it will tell the officer if they have it. So you can have a vehicle registered at say 80,000 pounds with the SHV, and then you're only allowed 72,000 in this combination, even if you have 80,000 pound plates. If the officer can run it, see that you have it, but sometimes with the way the Secretary of State works, it might not be on there yet. So it's always important to have that copy of that receipt or that receipt with the driver at all times so the officer can look at it. So again, at 2 to 5, he would be overweight because he'd only be allowed about 55,000 pounds right there, and he's going to weigh in the 60s. So we've hit the very, very basics on gross weight and weighing the trucks and what you guys are allowed. We're going to registered weight. Registered weight is essentially a tax paid to the state of Illinois to weigh a certain amount on the road. You can purchase any registration for any vehicle, regardless of the gross vehicle weight rating, regardless of the gross weight. If you want to go out and buy a Chevy S10 pickup truck and put a license, an apportioned license plate on it for 80,000 pounds, the Secretary of State will be happy to take your $2,890 and hand you a license plate. Your little Chevy S10 will never be able to weigh 80,000 pounds on the road at all. The max a 2-axle vehicle can ever weigh is 40,000, and plus a Chevy S10 is just not big enough to handle 80,000 pounds worth of weight. But they will be happy to take your money. And that's why it's important to look through the bridge formulas and the gross weights of what's allowed for your vehicles and register accordingly. There's nothing wrong with having a little insurance plan to register it a little higher, but know that if you have a truck that the max is going to be allowed to weigh is 40,000 pounds, paying for a license plate for 72,000 pounds is basically just giving the state money that right now, especially in these times, we don't have. The registered weight also has nothing to do with the driver's license. Again, you could have a Chevy S10 with an 80,000 pound license plate. It does not mean you need a CDL to drive it. It has nothing to do with what driver's license that vehicle needs. Totally separate things. And I thought another big important thing that comes up is your truck and your trailer license plates are always added together to determine your registered weight. So again, we could take our example. We have a Chevy S10 pickup, little tiny pickup. It's got 80,000 pound plates, and you hook a trailer up to it, and you put a license plate on your trailer for, you don't put a license plate on your trailer, you put a semi-trailer plate on it. So it's got 0 weight. Semi-trailer plates give you no weight, but you have an 80,000 pound Chevy S10 plate, and you put a Bobcat on the back of there or an excavator, and you're hauling that thing around, and you get pulled over. 80,000 pounds of that license plate on the truck carries for the whole vehicle. So you have a trailer that's, you're pulling that S10 and you have a trailer and it's big enough and the officer puts the whole thing on the scale and you have enough axles and you're allowed 80,000 pounds and he weighs you and you're 79,500 pounds, you have enough registered weight to cover the trailer and the truck on that. They cannot split them at all. There's only one time that the trailer gets split from the truck, and we're going to get into that here in a second. So the truck and the trailer are always added together. Farm plates, I wanted to kind of touch on this. Farm plates are for your farm. I've seen this a lot. I work up in the McHenry County area, so I see farm plates quite a lot. And one thing I see for farm plates is, guys, you cannot run a business on a farm plate. I've had it plenty of times where I see a guy go by and it says, you know, Jimmy's, you know, handiwork, and he's running farm plates, and you pull him over and he says, well, I own a farm. I'm a soybean farmer. I just got done working in the field, but now I'm going to go renovate a kitchen. And he's got farm plates on his truck. Those plates are no good. That's improper use of registration. You'll get, if you're driving a big truck, let's say this guy's driving a truck full of kitchen cabinets and other equipment, and he's a 50,000 pound truck, he's going to get a ticket for being 50,000 pounds overweight on registration because he doesn't have valid plates. You can only use your farm plates for your farming operations. The other one is mileage plates. You guys will probably have this. If you guys have plow trucks that you keep, these are only winter plow trucks. This is the only time we use them is for the winter. You might get mileage plates in the summer, vice versa. You only use these things in the summer. They don't plow. You got to have working odometers and hubometers. You got to make sure you're reporting that mileage to the Secretary of State's office and paying on it because your fee is based on your mileage used and your registered weight. You guys get a huge discount for having mileage plates. They're a great value if you're not using them, the truck year round. But if you're not reporting those items and you don't have a working hubometer or odometer in the truck or on the trailer, Secretary of State will void out your plates. Another one that's good is farm machinery. So any corn shellers, and again, I know you guys may have a tree farm or other things, so these types of plates may come up for you guys. Corn shellers, well drillers, hay press, clover haulers, feed mixers, other farm machinery permanently mounted. You guys can get farm machine plates. They're only for those items. They can be used as a for-hire movement. So if you buy a well driller truck and your buddy needs a well dug, he can hire you to do that. You can use these for that. I believe it's $13 a year for these license plates. Know the weights of your, especially well drillers, because I do see this where some of those well drillers can get pretty big, and some of those trucks can get pretty big. And then what happens is the plate doesn't cover it. And you can't be legal because it's so heavy that you have to buy a permit every time. So know the weight of the equipment you have on there, so you know if you can be legal or not. And again, apportion plates. Commercial vehicles used in 2 or more states. You have to report back to the Secretary of State's office how much you used it, how many miles, and pay your mileage accordingly. Apportion plates are also needed if you have 3 or more axles on the power unit and you cross into another state. So if you guys are running a business and part of your business is in Wisconsin, and you get a job down here in Illinois and you say, hey, go bring the 3-axle dump truck down here for the day, that truck needs apportioned plates or a 7-day drive-away, 7-day permit from the Secretary of State to come into Illinois, do your work, and leave. If you cross into Illinois with a 3-axle truck without paying any type of reciprocity back to Illinois, anything back to Illinois for those plates, then you don't have valid registration in Illinois. If you weigh over or registered over 26,001 pounds, that's a commercial motor vehicle, the state of Illinois is going to expect you to come back and pay for your share, or else you don't have valid registration. And the other one is making an intrastate move. And this one's an interesting one for me. I see this a lot also. One of the places I see this on, I believe I would say roofers are a good example of this. A lot of times come the summer months, guys from Texas come up here to do roofing on houses, and they have Texas plates, and they're staying up here for 2-3 months at a time, and they're doing their business. They're making an intrastate move. If that truck starts in Illinois and stays in Illinois, it's an intrastate move, and Illinois is going to look for some sort of money to be paid, fees, basically taxes paid back for their roads, for your use of the roads. Now, if you come in, say just an F-150 pickup truck, you load up in Wisconsin with a bunch of stuff from Wisconsin, you have Wisconsin plates, you come into Illinois, you deliver all that stuff, and you leave, and you didn't meet any of these 3 things. The first 2 are out. It's just an F-150 pickup, weighs 14,000 pounds. He's not making an intrastate move because he's bringing something in, dropping it off, and leaving. That's an interstate move. He's okay. It's only if he has, say, Wisconsin plates in Illinois, he picks something up in Illinois and he drops it off in Illinois. Now he just made an intrastate move, and he needs to be paying reciprocity back to Illinois for that. So registered weight and gross vehicle weight are 2 separate violations. Gross vehicle weight falls under 3401, or 15111 is gross vehicle weight. Registered weight is 3401. You can get a ticket for both. And that's what I talked about before, where there's nothing wrong with having a little insurance policy under your registration. You just don't want to overpay. A good example would be right in the guys that have 3-axle dump trucks. You'll see they have a Q plate and there's a Q plate and an R plate. The Q plate is 50,000. The R plate is 54,999. A lot of them will buy the R plate just to get that, to make sure that they're in there, because they can load up, they weigh 52,000 pounds, at least they're covered on the registration. But if their axle spacing measures out to only being allowed 49,000 pounds, now they're going to get a ticket for being 3,000 pounds overweight, but they're not getting the registered weight ticket. So you can get a ticket for both violations. So plate it for whatever it's going to carry at its heaviest. Don't give your money to the state. That says don't give your money to the state's insurance policy. But what I mean is don't buy a license plate for 72,000 pounds when the most that truck will ever weigh is 55,000 pounds. You're paying for 20,000 pounds of weight that you'll never need. Know that the registered weight may not be the same as the allowed gross weight. My perfect example there is that when we talk about special hauling vehicles, that shorty dump, those trucks normally have a V plate on it. That V plate is 73,280 pounds. But the most that truck will ever be allowed to weigh is 72,000. So what happens is guys get pulled over and they say, well, I'm allowed 73,280. No, you're allowed 72,000. You're registered for 73,280. It's just the way the numbers on the registration played out. The reason is because way back before 2009, there used to be 2 different weight limits for roads. That's all gone now. All roads are 80,000 pounds. So it used to be certain roads that were 73,280, and you had to weigh 73,280. Other roads were 80,000 pounds. So you had a V plate and a Z plate. And guys would have, depending on which roads they're going on or what their weight's going to be, I don't need a Z plate because I'll never be over 73,280. So they had those plates. That's all gone now. Every road is 80,000 pounds. There's no 73,280 roads anymore. So, like I said, shorty dump, yeah, V plates, he's registered for 73,280. He's only allowed 72,000 gross weight. So, special mobile equipment. This one's important because this comes into your wood chippers that you guys carry on the back. You guys have cranes that are just cranes. I don't know, some of you guys might do bigger landscape stuff and have, say, a great all, which is kind of like, it looks like a crane, but it's got a bucket for digging. Those are all considered special mobile equipment. This is just the definition of what it is. It's a long list. There's a lot of things that can be special mobile equipment. Sometimes we've gone to the Secretary of State's office and said, hey, would you consider this special mobile equipment? And on Tuesday they say it is, and on Wednesday they tell us no. So the best way to do it is to send them pictures and say, is this special mobile equipment? They even have a license plate. The Secretary of State offers a license plate that says, I don't need a license plate. It's called an exempt plate. It's red. To get it, you guys, if you have something where you think, hey, we keep getting pulled over because people keep telling us we need a license plate on this, but we're told it's special mobile equipment, you can actually apply for this exempt plate. I think it's, like I said, I think it's about 15, 20 bucks. It's a one-time, you don't have to renew it every year. And it's literally just a license plate that you put on your truck that says, I don't need a license plate. So registration is not required for special mobile equipment. Wood chippers are a perfect example of special mobile equipment, and it's definitely something you guys are going to be using. This wood chipper does not need registration. You could get like I said, you can get an exempt plate and put it on there. Cranes, if you guys have cranes or great alls, anything that is special to that equipment. If you have another good one at farming would be the combine. You have the front end of the combine, and they make a trailer that sits in to transport. That trailer itself is special mobile equipment. You would not need registration on it. However, the gross vehicle weight rating or the gross vehicle weight rate will take part in determining the driver's license classification needed to operate it. So you have this wood chipper attached to your truck. You could need a CDL to operate that combination because, again, registration has nothing to do with your driver's license class. So just because you don't need license plates doesn't mean you may not need a CDL. When an officer pulls you guys over to determine a registration violation, so he pulls your truck over and you have that wood chipper on it, and you know that wood chipper weighs 15,000 pounds, and he takes you to the scale because you have H plates on your truck for 26,000 pounds, and he thinks you're over, he has to take that wood chipper off in order to determine your registered weight. And if you're under your registered weight, that wood chipper has nothing to do with your registered weight because that wood chipper doesn't need registration. However, for the gross weight, the special mobile equipment is included and it's counted as axles. So that's a 2-axle wood chipper. You know it's going to weigh 15,000 pounds. You have an H plate on the truck. Again, take it off to determine if you're over the registered weight. But now you have a 2-axle, say a 2-axle truck you're hauling it with. So you're 4 axles. He measures you out and says, okay, you're allowed at 4 axles. At this axle distance, you're allowed 48,000 pounds. And he weighs your whole unit and you're 53,000 pounds. You will be over on the gross weight, but you may not be over on the registered weight. So we'll move into commercial driver's licenses. So there's 4 classes. A is the highest. If you think of a Class A license, think of just that semi-truck and trailer driver, that guy going over the road. He's got the Class A, the highest license allowed. If it's a B, he either doesn't haul a trailer or he has a smaller trailer. C is an Illinois license. Not every state has a C license. Wisconsin allows drivers to operate anything up to a Class B license on just their regular D license. Illinois put in the C license for anyone between 16 and 26,000 gross vehicle weight rating. So any vehicle up to 16,000 pounds could be a D. Once you get over the 16,000 for the vehicle itself, you could be moving up to a C or a B. Another thing to think about, PVDLs. You guys are hiring people with the TVDLs. They're awesome. It's a great way to get these guys to work and provide them a means to provide. They're only a Class D driver's license. They cannot drive anything that would require anything more than a Class D driver's license on that TVDL. They have to always have that proof of insurance in the vehicle or the TVDL is not valid. So you guys, you got to make sure paperwork is in order, because if you send your buddy, one of your employees out and he's driving that truck and he gets pulled over for whatever reason, speeding, weight violation, and he can't find that insurance card, technically his temporary visitor driver's license is not valid without it. And he could be charged with no valid driver's license. I would tell you that normally, and this is my personal experience, I'm not speaking as a whole for anyone else, but 9 times out of 10 that he's going to show up in court with that insurance and show that, hey, I got pulled over on this day and I had insurance on this day, and the ticket's not really going to stick. But it is something on the liability side for you guys to think about, that if he were to say, even if he got rear-ended, he's sitting at a stoplight, he gets rear-ended, he also goes to take the report, he puts on there that he didn't have insurance because he was unable to provide insurance. Maybe he gives him an insurance ticket but doesn't write him for the TVDL being invalid. An attorney is going to come back and say, well, his license, he shouldn't have been driving because the TVDL is only valid if he had insurance, and he didn't have insurance. It's documented here that he didn't have insurance when this officer investigated this crash. So he shouldn't have been driving, and it's going to put a little more liability on you guys for any personal injury issues you got or any other type of lawsuits that might come down. That's one thing I always like to teach when I teach to the industry. It's not always also about keeping the road safe and not getting tickets, but it's about being prepared for the liability, that if you guys make these choices and you do this, and it's an attorney that knows what they're doing, which we have members that are attorneys also within our organization who keep up on this stuff, they're gonna know, hey, if my client's not totally liable, even though he was drunk and rear-ended this guy shouldn't have been on the road, so it's his fault. Medical cards, this is another thing that comes up. It's required for any vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating of 10,001 or more. So any of your trucks, box trucks, pickup trucks, anything that you open the door of the truck and you look at the sticker, if it says GVWR of over 10,001 pounds, they have to have a medical card. Even with a Class D driver's license, they have to have a medical card to operate it. Now, that will only come into play if you are stopped by an Illinois state trooper. Any local officer does not have the authority to or should not be looking at medical cards at all. It doesn't matter. The only thing we look at is whether or not the license is the proper license for that truck and if it's valid. That's it. So the only time that's going to matter is if you get stopped by a state trooper. They're going to expect you to have, because any commercial vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating over 10,000 pounds, the driver has to have a medical card regardless of what type of driver's license they have. So again, you open that door and you look in there and you can see 33,000 pounds. This guy needs a Class B driver's license. We're going to go through this real quick because we're getting there. So use the gross vehicle weight rating of the truck. That's our first step, 33,000 pounds. If there's a trailer, look at the gross vehicle weight rating of the trailer. You add them up. If your total is over 26,001 pounds, what's the trailer's gross vehicle weight rating? If the trailer by itself is over 10,001 pounds, you need a Class A CDL to operate that combination. Now, if you add them up and the total is under 26,001 pounds, drop the trailer. Don't even look at it anymore. Now you just want to know, is the truck between 16 and 26? If it is, you need a Class C driver's license. If the truck is under 16, it's just a Class D. If there's no trailer, or the trailer is under 10,001 pounds gross vehicle weight rating, and the gross vehicle weight rating is over 26,001 or more. So you add it all up, and here's a good example. You have 33,000, and you're pulling a trailer that's 5,000. You're at 38,000 pounds. but the trailer's under 10,001, Class B, CDL. That's it. So again, you have a truck that's say 18,000 gross vehicle weight rating. You have a trailer that's say 9,000 gross vehicle weight rating. You're at 27,000 pounds. You've met that 26,001 pound threshold, but the trailer is under 10,001. Then all you need a Class B to operate that combination. So in the absence of the gross vehicle weight rating, or if the actual weight is more, the actual weight can be used. So the officer can put you on a scale and see what your weights are and then determine a gross license class based on that. It's always recommended to use the stickers, the gross vehicle weight rating stickers, but some trailers get crazy old, stickers wear off, so they can use the actual weight to determine what license is needed. Only for CDLs are endorsements and restrictions added. So a box truck with a GVWR 25999 requires a Class C driver's license. So even if it has air brakes, the Class C can be driven, but there's no air brake restriction or endorsement that's given to someone driving a truck with 25999 gross vehicle weight rating, because he doesn't need a CDL. That Class C is not a CDL. So he can drive an air brake truck that just needs a Class C without taking any extra tests. If that gross vehicle weight rating was 26,500 pounds, now he has a Class B driver's license and he needs to get tested with air brakes. So the tank endorsement is another one you guys will run into. 1,000 gallons or individual tanks rated at 119 gallons or more with a combined capacity of 1,000 gallons or more requires the tank endorsement on CDL vehicles. Again, a Class C and a D, they don't give endorsements or restrictions because they're not CDLs. So on CDL vehicles, you would need a tank endorsement for that. Now, if you're just bringing a tank to a job site and dropping it off, as long as it's empty, and say it's a 1,000-gallon tank, and you're dropping it off at the job site, then you don't need to worry about the endorsement as long as you can show that it's not permanently mounted and it's not part of the truck. So we'll go through safety lanes real quick. They're required on vehicles depending on what registration. If the vehicle's got a portion plates, it's a US DOT and it's registered as interstate, then the federal rules apply. But if it's operated only with Illinois, it's got flat weight plates, then the Illinois rules apply. And again, if you have a DOT number, but you're registered as an intrastate carrier, you don't leave the state, then you have to abide by Illinois rules. So how to determine if it needs it. So if you it's all by registration for the Illinois safety lane. The federal one is by gross vehicle rating, and it's basically anything 10,001 pounds or more needs to be safety inspected. So vehicles with a registered weight of 26,001 pounds or more must abide by the semi-annual safety test. So every or twice a year. Vehicles registered 10,001 to 26,000 are allowed to have an annual safety test. And the 8,001, this is the new C plate, the new C license plate that just came out within this last year, 8,001 to 10,000 pounds must abide by this annual safety test if it's being used in commercial purposes. So if you go to a dealership, you buy a pickup truck, they put a C license on it, but it's just your personal truck, you just do personal things with it, you don't need a safety lane. But if you're using it for your landscaping company, then it needs to be safety tested. If it's pulling a trailer with an actual weight or registered weight over 10,001 pounds, then the pulling vehicle has to have a safety test. The trailer also, but the pulling vehicle has to have a safety test. So semi-trailers and semi-trucks are allowed an annual test. The trailers, actual weight over 5,000 pounds must be safety tested. Semi-trailers are annual. So this is just a regular trailer, and this is a semi-trailer. So part of the weight is carried within the truck, so it's considered a semi-trailer. So this guy can be tested every year in this configuration. So now you guys have a basic understanding of all the pieces of these puzzles, and you get pulled over by a police officer. we're here to ensure safe roads. So most officers, and I put this in here because I really want to stress this, most officers who are involved in any kind of truck enforcement never even notice who the driver is until they have the truck stopped. I can tell you from personal experience that when guys look at me and they think that I'm looking at the driver, I'm looking at the front windshield to see what your safety test says, to see if it's valid or not. I'm looking at the side of your door to see what it says. I'm looking at what's in the bed of your truck, see how heavy it is. Is it a pallet of bricks? Is it 10 pallets of bricks? I'm looking at your leaf springs in the back to see if the helper spring is touching, if they're going the completely other way, the tires. I'm looking at every little truck thing that you can think of. I don't even look to see who the driver is until I have them stopped. So a good truck enforcement officer is looking at all these little stickers and all this stuff and still trying to keep their eyes on the road. So they're looking at tires, load, guessing to see if it's overweight or any other violations. They may be running the license plate to see if it's valid. They see what registered weight they've got. So when they see something and they decide that they're going to pull you over, and when it comes to being pulled over for an overweight violation in Illinois, all an officer needs is reasonable suspicion. So all he needs to be able to do is stand up in court and say, I looked at that truck and it looked pretty heavy, so I pulled him over. That's it. Everything else needs probable cause, which is also, he didn't change signal when he changed lanes, he was speeding, he went through a red light. Those are all probable cause things. For weight violations, all they have to do is articulate, this truck looked heavy, this is why. And it's always a good idea to have a reason why. The tires were completely over deflected and looked like they were flat. The load in the truck was crazy heavy. The guy had 3,000 pound trailer plates, and in my experience, the Bobcat, I know that Bobcat by itself was 8,000 pounds, so I already knew that this whole load was probably going to be over based on what he was hauling. They should be able to articulate all of that. So when those lights come on, pull over. If you can pull in a parking lot, that's great, but don't keep driving to find a parking lot. Just pull to the right, and we'll guide you if we want you off the road. Please do not pull over into the center median. Always pull over to the right. If you pull into the center median on a traffic stop, that officer is now dealing with the cars coming behind it and the cars coming the other way. And the cars coming the other way aren't going to see his lights because he's behind your big truck. Make sure, help these guys out. If you guys are the safety managers or fleet managers, make sure they have all their paperwork. A lot of guys just have a binder and they just keep that stuff. Throw out insurance cards. Have the current card accessible. Throw out paperwork that's expired or old. Just, you guys get a new insurance card, you go to that glove box, take the old one out and put the new one in. And I know all you guys are sitting there thinking to yourself, oh, my personal card probably has 3 years worth of insurance cards piled up. Please throw that stuff out, because what happens is you stand there and the officer's standing there on the side of the road watching you look through every insurance card that's known to man. You can show it electronically. It is absolutely acceptable, but again, have it easily accessible. I know like State Farm, you can even put it in your Apple Wallet if you have an iPhone. So you just go to your wallet and you can pull up your current insurance card and just show that you have a valid insurance card for that truck. So if you have ITEA, make sure you have your ITEA stickers on the truck, which is your fuel tax for guys that go across state lines in commercial vehicles and big trucks. Your SHV, like I said, make sure you have that paperwork ready to go and you're not looking through all this paperwork on the side of the road. So if your sticker's expired, make sure you have, or if it's worn out, these things, you guys work hard all day, these trucks get dirty, those stickers wear out. Make sure the driver has a copy of the safety lane test, so they also can look and say, okay, this thing was tested 3 weeks ago, the sticker's worn out, I'm confident that we're okay here. There is no grace period on safety lanes. That's another one that I hear. If you fail the safety lane, it has to be fixed immediately. There is no, I get 30 days to go work and do whatever I want until I decide to get this thing fixed, and then I'll go back. Once your truck has failed, it's failed. It needs to be fixed and have a valid safety lane before you continue doing work. Again, local officers, we don't look at logbooks, we don't look at medical cards. There's no reason for us to ask for them. You're welcome to share them with us. That's great. We should just be handing them right back to you because we don't keep track of any of those types of things. So every officer has a different approach to their job. And I say this because it's all about the interaction. I hear stories where I talk to people and they say, oh, that officer was so rude and he was so mean. And I even had a gentleman call me not too long ago to tell me that he intentionally messed with the officer because he knew the officer was going to get upset. And the officer did get upset. Well, that's not cool. We're all working. A good officer should be out there. He may not be the most friendly guy, but he's out there trying to work. So if you just kind of be friendly back to him, I'm not telling you to put up with rudeness, but don't be confrontational. A lot of times guys pull over a truck driver and they immediately want to tell the officer, no, you're wrong because of this and you're wrong because of that. And eventually they find out that the officer knows what he's doing and he's not wrong. If the driver has to notify his supervisor, let the officer know. Do it when it's a good time. Another thing is don't have the driver just pick up the phone and be on the phone while the officer's trying to have a conversation with them. It just, all that's going to create is some dissension between the two. Don't debate with them. Listen to what they have to say. If you guys are wrong, or if you guys are right, we can go to court. We can provide documentation. We can help you guys work through it. Nothing's going to be fixed on the street. If that officer's doing something he shouldn't, he's writing bad tickets, he's going to write bad tickets. Arguing with him is not going to change that fact. So let's work through it. And then the ITEA, one of the things we do is, you call us as a member and we'll say, hey, we'll reach out to that officer. We'll find out what the story is. We'll get all the facts together and we'll come back to you and say, this is what happened. A lot of times you guys will get a story from your driver who got a ticket and he'll say, this is what happened. And then we call the officer and they're like, no, that's not at all what happened. And it's not that your driver's being dishonest, but he may just not have been listening or didn't hear everything that the officer was telling him because now he's upset he's getting a ticket. So we can help out with that. We can help steer officers back on course if they are going off course. It's one thing that we do to make sure you guys are getting a fair shake. Ask questions. Don't, obviously not right up in the beginning and be confrontational, but if you're going to the scale, feel free to ask questions. A good officer, and especially one that we've taught, should be happy to teach you guys why he stopped you and what he looked at. And then you guys say, oh, make sure that the next time I'm on a job site and I start to see that happening, I know that I'm hitting my capacity and I'm probably going to be overweight, so I should stop. Again, that's what we're here for. Reach out to us. We're happy to educate, work through, provide resources. So now you got your tickets, you're heading back to the shop and you're parking up for the night. And you want to make sure that in the morning all your stuff is there because you got an overweight ticket you got to pay and you got to have equipment for work. So landscape equipment theft is on the rise. It's on the rise at the sites and it's on the rise back at your offices. First and foremost, always know and keep track of all your equipment. Know the make, the model, serial number, value, and have photos. One thing, and this isn't even just in your industry, but it's in everything. An officer goes to take a report of a theft and they say, okay, what was stolen? That was a leaf blower. All right, what was the model? I don't know, it was red. Okay, I can't do anything with that. So if you have, a list within the trucks, even if, in the truck it says, hey, I have this trailer and this is the equipment that's in this trailer. And I realize that some of you guys, especially bigger ones, you guys may have 1,000 leaf blowers and this one breaks. So they just go and grab a different one and they put it in the truck and then it gets stolen. And which leaf blower got stolen, I don't know, because they threw that one in the shop. I get it, but if you can come up with a system or something, because officers have the ability to enter this stuff in a database as it's stolen. So if an officer 3 towns over makes a traffic stop on a guy that's speeding, looks in the back and says, hey, I know over in Carroll Stream, they just had a leaf blower that got stolen. They can verify that it's the leaf blower that we're looking for. They also use a tool, a lot of our departments, and where I work, it's required for anyone that buys things like pawn shops, a database called Leads Online. So in our businesses, if they're going to buy gold or pawn shops, jewelry stores, they have to participate in this Leads Online. And what they do is they take a picture of the item and they upload all the information, the serial number, make, model, as well as a driver's license image of who's selling it, and usually a snapshot of the person in the store selling it, and it gets uploaded. So the patrol officer takes that report and he can go to Leads Online or go to his detectives, and they can put that information in that database even for later. So 2 weeks later, some guy goes into a pawn shop and sells you a leaf blower. It's flagged. It'll pop up in the system and say, hey, you guys were looking for this leaf blower. It just got sold in the south side of Chicago at this pawn shop. Here's a picture of the guy that sold it. So we have a lead on it and we can find it. We can also then, by law, go to that pawn shop and take that item from them and hold on to it and recover your equipment. But without the serial numbers and without pictures and all that stuff, it's really hard to recover your equipment. Make sure it's locked up. Don't leave equipment out of the trailer. Obviously, lock up what you're not using. So guys are just leaving stuff on the front lawn. You know, landscape theft, there's a lot of thefts. It's a crime of opportunity. Most of these guys are just driving somewhere and they say, hey, look at that, there's a leaf blower, and I know that leaf blower is worth $1,000. I'm gonna grab it because those guys are working in the backyard and this thing's just laying here, and they just grab it and take off. So if there's nothing that can be taken, the thief's gonna move on. They're not gonna break into trailers, especially not ones that are parked at a job site. You know, they're not gonna be picking locks and breaking in because it's gonna attract too much attention. They're gonna go for the easy grab. So it's rare on a job site or parking lot, but they're going to smash windows. In your yard, obviously use cameras. One thing I would say too is if you can, and you can invest in cameras and put cameras in places that will do a better job of catching images of people. A lot of times when we take a burglar to a business and they have a camera and it's a camera that's like 300 feet away up in an eave, and all you see is the headlights of a car at 3 o'clock in the morning and a guy with a hoodie 300 feet away breaking into a shed. But if you have a camera even towards the entrance or a little lower down, something that gets us a better angle of people so you can get a better shot of what we're looking at. So we can send these images out to other agencies and they can say, hey, I know that's Bob. Bob's our local thief. Obviously he's moved over to your town and he's stealing. Try to back up trailers or trucks kind of against each other. So the doors, if you try to open the doors, you can't open them enough to get in there and get your stuff. It's a simple thing. It's just something to think about. You get those things close enough so when they can't open the doors. They're not going to cut holes in the side of trailers. They're going to go for the easy thing. They may break a lock in a yard, but if they can't even get the trailer door open enough to get in there, they're not going to have anything to steal. Obviously, lock up your keys and keep track of extras, because if you guys fire a guy and 4 months later something's missing, well, it might be because that guy kept a set of keys that you didn't know about. So that, I think I did pretty good there, is gonna wrap my presentation. I would love to open up for some questions.
Thank you, Mark. On behalf of the Illinois Landscape Contractors Association, we really appreciate the time you gave us this afternoon. I know some of these topics can be pretty arcane, so thank you for simplifying them. We do have quite a few questions, so I think
Sure.
we're just going to kind of hit the ground running. The first question is, the app that you showed, that is just for Illinois, correct?
Yes. Yes, so the federal bridge formula is, there's certain changes. Wisconsin allows different things for different trucks, but for the most part, it will fill out other places. But yes, everything is geared towards Illinois truck laws. So yes.
Do trucks under 26,001 gross vehicle weight hauling only tools need an apportioned plate if they're staying out of state for longer than a day?
I'm sorry, what was the weight? Let's go over that again.
26,001 pounds.
Under?
The truck's under 26,001, yes.
So if he's under 26,001 pounds, actual weight, registered weight, he doesn't have 3 axles on the power unit, so it's a, say, a 2-axle box truck that's 24,000 pounds, and he goes up to Wisconsin to do work, as long as he's not making an intrastate move up there, he'll be okay. So if he brings all his stuff up there and he does his work and he has to stay up there for a couple nights, he should be okay. But it's once he starts, bringing gear back and forth, going to, a yard and filling up with equipment and making intrastate moves within Wisconsin, Wisconsin's going to look and say, hey, you need to start paying reciprocity back.
Does Wisconsin require a medical card for any CMB over 10,000 in gross weight?
That's a federal regulation. The medical cards are a federal regulation, which is why local law enforcement doesn't enforce it. Only the state police will enforce it. But yes, that's under the FMCSA guidelines.
What is a safety test?
So a safety test, and it's also found under the FMCSA guidelines, and Illinois uses the same guidelines. Essentially, it is a sticker that you'll find it in the front windshield of your truck or on the driver's side of the trailer, and you have to bring it to a certified safety lane place, which you can find on IDOT's website. And they check the brakes, they check the horn, they check the mirrors, everything. They check the overall of the truck to ensure that it's roadworthy, basically. And they put a sticker in there and make sure that you're safe.
When are you required to buy ITEA tags?
So if your vehicle operates in 2 or more states and it weighs over 26,001 pounds, then you would need ITEA tags. If it has 3 or more axles, it's almost the same things as a commercial vehicle requirement for ITEA. 3 or more axles, weighs over 26,000 on a scale. The only thing is the intrastate move is the only one that doesn't count under ITEA.
And then one of our attendees wanted you to confirm. So the highest gross vehicle weight ratio vehicle that a Class D license can drive would be 25,999 pounds.
So if it's in Wisconsin, because they don't have a Class C. So in Illinois, a Class D license, just a basic everyday license you get when you turn 16, can operate any vehicle up to 16,000 pounds gross vehicle weight rating. 16,001 to 26,000 is a Class C license.
Do all commercial vehicles require ELDs?
They do not. And again, this gets into more of a federal regulations, which normally, and I'll get into this with the ITEA, we have great relationships with the state police because we don't teach or do any FMCSA or federal enforcement with ELDs and logbooks. So a lot of these questions, usually what we would do is reach out to the state police, get a solid answer to get back to you guys. But I can tell you that no, they do not all need ELDs. I can tell you that if you come home every night, you do not need an ELD. So if you're like a paid hourly worker, and most of the people that are in this group are going to be landscapers that have guys that go out at 6 in the morning, they come home at 6 at night, they park the trucks and they go home. They do not need to log hours. They do not need ELDs.
And then one last question here. I have a truck with a gross vehicle weight ratio of 12,000 pounds and a trailer with a GVWR of 9,000 pounds. Do I need a Class B or a Class C license?
No, and we can work right through that. So you add the two up at 12,000 and 9,000 is 21,000. So it's not over 26,001. So you can knock out the two B and A because you're not over 26,000. And then you go and look at the truck itself, leave the trailer out of it, just look at the truck, and the truck is under 16. So it just needs a regular Class D driver's license to operate that combination.
I feel like every day you're having to solve story problems for people, Mark. So I empathize with you as e-learning at home. But we're going to wrap it there. And I just really want to thank you again, Mark, for lending us your time. We have worked closely with the Illinois Truck Enforcement Association for many years and over the years. And you're just a class act organization who I think really tries to balance the voices of obviously trucking companies, but then also law enforcement and try to sort of meet in the middle. I just want to once again thank you for lending us your time and your expertise. Your ability to just pull this stuff off the top of your head is very impressive, especially since most landscape companies don't always have even a fleet manager. It's usually just somebody who's having to figure this out in their spare time. So as I mentioned before, this video is recorded. We are going to post it to our members only website as well as our closed Facebook group. Please give us 48 hours. If you have any additional questions for Mark, you can email us at information@ilca.net and we'll look to get you a prompt response. And with that, I just want to wish everyone a safe and productive end to the landscape season. And of course, as we all look forward to the snow season. So thank you again, Mark, and we'll see you soon, ILCA members.